All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I'm going through the PowerPoint presentations for the 8th edition of Web Development and Design Foundations with HTML5 by Terry Felk-Morris for the AWD 1000 Web Technologies class. We're into Chapter 2, and as you can see here again, we've got about another 11 or 12 objectives. We want to describe HTML, XHTML, and HTML5. I did a little bit of that in the last chapter. We'll identify the markup language in a web page document. We'll use some of the elements that you use most often to code a template for a web page, including HTML, head, body, title, and meta elements. We'll talk about how to configure a web page by using the different headers, paragraph tags, line breaks, divs, lists, and block quotes. We'll configure text with phrase elements. We'll be very much have an introduction to some of the new HTML5 tags such as header, nav, main, and footer. We'll talk about special characters, how to use the anchor element to link from a page to a page, how to create absolute, relative, and email hyperlinks, how to be able to code, save, and display a web page document, and finally, how to test a web page document for valid syntax. So, HTML is an acronym that stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is a tag-based language. As it says, it's a set of symbols or codes placed in a file that allows it to be displayed on a browser's web page. As mentioned in the last chapter, the standards body for HTML and most everything related to HTML is the W3C, or World Wide Web Consortium. Each markup code, as mentioned here, represents an HTML element. Each element has a purpose. Most of these elements are going to have an opening tag and a closing tag, but not all. Tags are enclosed in what are called angle brackets, sometimes called a less than sign and a greater than sign. HTML5 is the newest version or iteration of HTML. It's supported by virtually all modern browsers. If you write your HTML5 correctly, it'll be backwards compatible. It did allow some new elements to be added and some new functionality to be added. What they tried to do with HTML5 in a nutshell was they said, okay, in these former versions that we had of HTML going up to HTML 4.01 and 4.1, what doesn't it have that we need? One of the big things was native video and audio support, and that's still ongoing. This is the logo, so when you see this, and maybe you saw this in the last chapter where I showed you the tag list and some of the tags had this in front of it, this is HTML5. That's its logo. All right. Back in the days, for document type definition, and I want to show you this. I think this is important to just take a little interlude here. But back in the days, you had to write something like this. And I want to show you this. You had to write something along those lines. All right? And if you didn't write that, then you typically wrote something like this, where it had all this, and it might have said strict. And this might have said strict. And I believe there was another one. I always get a little mixed up on this. That rather than saying this stuff, I believe it said here frame set. Now, I'm not sure if that was an official one. The other two are. So what does this mean? This means if you see this, it's an older HTML document, but it's transitioning. What transitional means is, all right, we want to be able to support our entire tag list, including any tags that have been marked as deprecated. I showed you those deprecated tags before. All right, they're all the ones here that are in red, not supported in HTML5. But if something is transitional, it is supported. So this is an older, what's called a doc type or document type. This one, strict, said don't support any of these deprecated tags. So anything that was shown there in red would not be supported if the doc type was strict. With frameset, it's sort of a cross between the two. Frameset said don't support any of those tags except ones that deal with frames. Now, do you have to care about that? No. In fact, what we're going to start doing in here immediately is we're going to be using the HTML5 doc type. That's all of this stuff that you see here and here and here has been fixed with just this. Now notice two things about it. First of all, I tend to make all of my tags in lowercase, whereas sometimes you'll see the HTML or the D in doc type or all of this in uppercase. All right, and you'll also notice that a lot of this has been replaced with just this. There is nothing that says HTML5. This is the document type for HTML5, period. Oops. So, a document type definition, a DTD, as it says, it identifies the version of HTML contained in your document. It's placed at the top. This is the old, this is the new. Here's an example of how you'd set up an HTML5 web page. Now, this is what the course is about, so if it all doesn't make sense right now, please don't let it bother you. All right? I'm going to again come in here, and I'm not trying to do this to confuse anyone. I'm really not. But I'm going to grab everything that's in here, copy it. Whoops. I want to copy it to the clipboard. I want to start up a new file. Let me just get rid of everything that was in here. Paste that in. And where it's got this is just garbage. I'm going to put in just a tag here. And that's going to say, whoops. I'm going to put in a tag that says, my first web page. All right, and under the title where it says page title goes here, that's kind of a dumb name. So I'm going to say website number 1. All right, now I'm going to take this file and I'm going to save it to my desktop. And I'm going to save it and I'm going to put double quotes around it so I'm sure it saves correctly. Index.html. Notice as soon as I do that, watch how the coloring here changes. All right. Because the editor that I'm using, which is a very cheap little free editor called Notepad++, recognizes that HTML, head, title, body, H1, etc., those are all keywords. It realizes that lang and char set are what are called attributes, such as the attribute I have, my height, my weight, my gender, etc. EN and UTF-8, those are values of attributes. But what I want to show you is I want to come in here and run this. Okay, so there's my first web page. Why am I showing you that? Well, I'm going to try to take this and cut this way the hay down so you can hopefully see what's going on in here. All right. First of all, notice I put my doc type, which says I'm writing an HTML5 document. This says everything that you put in is between HTML tags. This right here is an attribute that's not mandatory, but you'll see that most of the time. It says the language that I'm using is English. Even if I leave it out, it defaults to English, but it's considered good practice. Everything that doesn't appear directly on the web page itself goes in what's called the head section. So notice title website number 1. Where is that? That's right there. That's not on the web page. The title is what you see up in your tab. Your tab's up on top. So you'll notice if I change that from website number 1 to Jeff's website number 1 as an example, and I save this. Now I'm going to refresh the browser and watch how that changes. Well, I just removed it. Looking for how I refresh here. Well, there's website number 1. Let's just go and run it again. How's that? So you can see website number 1. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to run it again. Now notice it says Jeff's website. It's actually all there. You just can't see it because the tab is only a certain width. All right? This says that the character set that I'm using, and that's basically the set of characters the computer recognizes, is UTF-8, which means Universal Transformation Format. It means I'm using what's called Unicode, something we're going to talk about later in the course. That's everything in my head section. What's in the body section is what actually appears on the website itself. That has an H1 tag, and we're going to go into these in a little more depth later, that says my first web page. So if I come through here and after that type in a P tag, and it says welcome to the world of website creation. And I save this and I go and run it again. Notice now I've got that paragraph that I just put in there. This is what the class is about. So if what I'm saying confuses you, please don't let it. All right, just bear with me for a while here. You know, we're a one and a fifth chapter into a 14-chapter book. I just wanted to mention that stuff to you. So here's the author. The head section contains information that describes the document, but it doesn't appear directly on the document itself. The body contains text elements elements that actually do display on the web page. So the title element and the meta element I already explained to you. These heading levels, let's go and grab what the author has here. Again, when I do this, I'm not trying to do it to confuse you. I'm trying to do it to show you what's all in here. All right, so I'm going to come back here where we have my first web page. I'm going to come down here and paste these in. So there are 6 heading levels that you work with in HTML. They are tags H1 through H6. The bigger the number, the smaller the tag. So the heading level 1 will be the biggest tag, heading level 6 will be the smallest tag, and what you'll see is as we do these, they will get smaller with each iteration. So there they are. All right, if I come back here and I remove these first 2 things that I put in, then hopefully at least it will all show on the same page. There we go. Heading level 1 is the biggest. Heading level 6 is the smallest. We'll get into these, how they're used, why they're used, as we go on in the course. I showed you a paragraph element. Notice again, beginning tag, end tag, beginning tag, end tag. What's the difference? The end tag has a slash between it. Paragraphs, beginning tag, end tag. You use a paragraph tag just like you see a paragraph in a book. It groups sentences and sections of text together. Now, both of these that we looked at so far, the heading tags and the paragraph tags, are called block tags, which means by default they'll put a blank line above them and a blank line below them. Later we'll look at some other tags that are referred to as inline tags. Those will not have a line above them or below them, but these are what are called block level elements. All right, a line break. Well, if I start typing in, again, sorry, I keep doing this, but I believe it's imperative that I do this. And that is if I come back here, all right, if I come back here, and let's get rid of all these. We'll leave the H1 tag in there, okay? And if I type in this, in fact, let's put in the old classic Now is the time for all good people to come, let's hit enter here, to the aid of their party. All right, and I'm going to copy this. But before I put it in, I'm going to hit enter here after the word to. I'm going to hit it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so I've hit that, and I'm going to end my paragraph tag here. And let's run this. And you'll notice, wow, it doesn't have those 5 lines in there. Why? Because for lack of better words, those line breaks were eaten up. Those line breaks that we see in here are treated as though they're a single hitting the space bar. So these are all ignored. If I want there to be 5 blank lines in there, I put in what are called BR tags. Now notice the difference. Now I should have, after the word to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blank lines. And there they are. Line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why is that important? Well, one thing is, notice this is what's called a self-closing tag. What that means is just that. There is no slash before it. There's no slash after it. You'll sometimes see them written like this, which is old school, but is still considered acceptable. All right, but by and large, they're written like this. It's less typing. This makes more sense. But it is a line break element. As it says, it causes the next element or text to display on a new line. If we want to use a block quote element, it'll do some indentation. All right. Let's see. Let's go back. I don't know why, but for some reason it's kind of eluding me right now. But let's go into here, and I'm going to type into here famous quotes. Well, I don't want that. I actually want some quotes, something where I can grab some text. Good quotations by famous people. Okay, so let's grab this. Let's grab. How about this? Glory is fleeting, but obscurity is forever, from Napoleon Bonaparte. All right, so I'm going to grab that, but I'm going to take that. Let's just get rid of all these blank lines that we had in here. We'll keep our paragraph in here. And then we're going to put in a block quote tag. There's our beginning. There's our ending block quote. And we're going to put it in just like this. Okay, so it looks just like that. Now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to run it again. And notice what it did. It actually centers the tag on the page. That's not, this is left justified, all this stuff, this is center justified. All right? Now, what happened over time is that what some people did was they used HTML tags for incorrect purposes. For instance, sometimes people would use block quotes solely because they wanted to center things on the page. They should only be used to indent a block of text for special emphasis. In other words, to show some kind of a quote. And again, it is a block level or a block display tag, meaning there'll be an empty line above it and an empty line below it. Here are some examples of tags. Now you'll notice here we've got B, which bolds, and we've got strong for strong. B and I, these two tags right here, the B tag and the I tag, are old tags. They shouldn't be used anymore. All right? B should be replaced with strong, because strong will work better on people, for example, for a browser for the blind. You're not sure how a B tag will be done, but a strong tag will show special emphasis. An EM, which is an emphasis tag, replaces the I, which is italicized. I want to quickly show you all of these. So going back again to what we just had, let me again grab all of them. It's going to look a little funky for a minute while I put all this stuff in there. Let's, I'll show you something else too. I want to comment out the stuff I've been working with. So I put a greater than sign, an exclamation point, minus, minus, and you notice how it turns green. And then when I want to stop commenting, I can put in a minus, minus with a greater than sign. That stuff is now all commented out, which means it won't show. Well, I'm not sure if this will actually allow me to copy this stuff or not. Copy. And let's try to paste it in. It's not. All right, that's fine. I'll just put it in manually. Whoop, I don't want to do that. I want this to come over here. There we go. All right, so I'm going to put in first a bold tag. This, we'll put all these in paragraphs. This is bolded text. So I'm going to first do it with a bold tag, then I'm going to put in a strong tag. All right. We'll call this bolded old. We'll call this bolded new. We'll call this emphasized old. And we'll call this emphasized new. We'll use the mark tag here. Hopefully I'm not making any mistakes here. I think everything is okay. First is sub. So if I've got a B tag here, I got a slash B here, a strong slash strong. I slash I, M slash M, mark slash mark, small slash small, sub slash sub, and a sup. And the sub is subscripted text, and the sup is superscripted text. So let's quickly run this so you can see. There's bolded text, the old way, the new way, emphasized the old way, the new way, marked up, small text, subscripted, meaning it's a little lower, and superscripted. So I should have changed that, I guess. That one should have actually said here, should have changed to superscripted. Just to be consistent. And there's superscripted. All right? So you've had a chance to see some of these. That's all I'm trying to do with this, is to just go through some of the stuff with you. All right? All right, jumping ahead. Code. Okay, so when you do this, the browser displays this. It's in a paragraph tag, meaning there's a blank line above it, blank line below it. I call for your stuff, for your web development needs. That means this whole thing, because notice the I tag, everything's inside of it, is all emphasized or italicized. The phone number is in strong tags, which means it's all bolded. Also notice how these tags are set up. Beginning P tag, ending P tag must be at the end. The I tag is between there, so the I tag must be at the end. The strong tag, so everything is nested inside of everything else. Okay? Let's look at 3 different kinds of lists: unordered lists, ordered lists, and description lists. Again, rather than showing it the way they are in the book, I'm showing it by actually building this stuff onto what I'm creating here. So let me take and comment out what we just did. So we'll comment all of this out. I'll hit enter a few times. In fact, let's hit enter a bunch of times here. All right. And now we want to talk about unordered lists. So that goes into what's called a UL tag for unordered list, and there's our ending UL tags. And unordered lists are made up of what are called list items, LI tags. So we'll call this how about some of my favorite colors? Let's just say blue, green, and yellow. All right, now I'm going to grab that same list that I just created, copy it to the clipboard, paste it back in, but I'm going to change that UL to an OL, which means it's an ordered list. All right, and let's take a look at what those two look like. So there's an unordered list. You notice it has dots there, which means there isn't necessarily any kind of semblance of order for this. All right. On the other hand, with the OL, it's an ordered list, which means there is a semblance of order to them. So when you want to put things in an order, you use OL or ordered list tags. When the order is basically irrelevant, you use a UL or an unordered list tag. And that's what the author will say in the next couple of slides here. So there's an unordered list, displays a bullet or some kind of a list marker. You can change this. We'll talk about that in later chapters. Begins with a UL, it ends with a /UL. Inside of the ULs are LIs that end with /UIs. Unordered list, list item. So there's their example. In ordered list, there should be some semblance of order. So instead of a UL, there's an OL. Other than that, they look the same. So typically, there is some kind of semblance of order to it. So you apply to a school before you register for a course. You register for the course before you pay the tuition. You pay the tuition before you attend the course. So you can see there is a semblance of order to all these. All right, description lists aren't used as often. As it says, they're useful to display a list of terms and descriptions, or a FAQ or frequently asked question list. They're made up of DLs, which are a description list, DT, which is a description term, and DD, which is description data. Let me just grab everything that they have here, and I'll use their example. I very rarely, if ever, use these. But for completeness sake, I'm trying to put everything in here. So you've got the DL, the definition list. Inside of the DL, you've got DTs, which is the term. And inside of there, you've got DDs, which is the data. So this is kind of the term, and that's the definition. The term and the definition, etc. So if I run this one, notice what that looks like. And it automatically gets pushed over a little bit. Again, I'm not saying other people don't use those. I'm telling you, I very rarely, if ever, use those. All right, another of our infamous checkpoints here. Next are special characters. These typically are referred to as HTML character entities. All right, and again, to jump back, as I have been doing, be this good or bad, but when I jump back into here, in fact, let's close some of this stuff. And I'm going to put in here HTML character entities. And I can guarantee you that one of the first things that will come up will be W3 schools. There they are. All right, so I'm going to click this. And character entities are a simple way for you to be able to put things on to a web page. So if I want to actually put a greater than sign onto a web page, the system doesn't will naturally think that's the beginning of an HTML tag. But if I don't want it to be, if I want to say 6 is less than 12, then I put 6 and I put ampersand LT semicolon, which is the entity's name, or I can put this number there. The ones you'll use, let's go through a couple of examples of them. All right, again, I'm going to come down here and take what I've been working on and comment it out. Hit enter a few times. All right, and come in here and let's put in a paragraph tag. And we're going to put in some stuff that's going to be kind of silly, but I want to say 6 is greater than 3. That won't work the way that it is. It doesn't know what that greater than sign is, so I'm going to say ampersand GT. That's a character entity. All right, I'm going to grab and put in a bunch of these. And then I'll say 6, or 3 rather, is less than 6. All right. If I want to say Barnes and Noble bookstore. Now that'll probably work the way that it is, but most of the time you'll see there that is amp. Finally, let's put in one more. And I'm going to put in ampersand copy dash 2017. Okay, and I do need a semicolon. All these entities end with semicolons at the end. So let's save this and let's run it. Notice 6 greater than 3, 3 less than 6, Barnes and Noble. There's my copyright symbol. What I've just shown you are probably the HTML character entities that you're going to use most often. The same ones that are shown in the book here on this slide. There are other ones as well. All right. When you work with web pages, you end up using what are called divs and what are called spans. A div is a division. As it says, a div will allow you to configure a structural block or a division on a web page. It'll, again, since it's one of these block level elements or block display elements, it'll have a blank line above it and a blank line below it. We're going to end up creating stuff that looks like this. So a web page will have a header at the top. It might have a company logo, might have a tagline. The nav bar here, this will be our menu. This will be our main area. That area in this case consists of 3 divs. If you don't understand what they are, you will as we move through them. And then we'll have a footer at the bottom. Throughout the book, the author is going to end up using this Trillium media design. So we'll be working with that. All right, and it'll be set up somewhat like this, and we'll move on as we go. All right, anchor elements, A tags. One of the things that makes the internet what it is and what makes web pages what they are. Now, I want to show you a bad usage of one of these tags. So why would I show you a bad usage? There's actually a reason. If you'll just bear with me for a minute. All right, so I'm going to say click. And let's surround all of this in paragraph tags. Notice they can be on a line by themselves. That doesn't hurt anything. Oops. All right. So now if I run this, and I've commented out all the other stuff, click here. So if I click there, what happens? I go to Rankin Technical College's homepage. All right. I said before, this is a bad example, because you really shouldn't put like here, okay? What you should do is I should have done something like this. I should have said, for example, all right, hopefully I did it correctly, but we're going to see now when I run it if I did or not. All right, notice, I mean, that's pretty big, but if you are going to define an anchor like this, you shouldn't say click here. The person should always know where they're going to go when they click it. Plus, you may or may not be able to see this, but if you look down on the very bottom left-hand corner here, when I put the mouse there, it tells me where it's planning on going. All right, the Rankin Technical College homepage. So this is what's called an anchor tag. A for anchor, href for, this is the hypertext reference we want to go to. So we want to go in this case to a file called, open up a file called contact.html, and the link, which will be underlined by default, will say contact us. So there's the beginning A tag, there's the ending A tag, and in between it you've got what you want underlined. So href is the name of the file name or the URL. When you do this, you can use either what are called absolute or relative hyperlinks. If it's absolute, it's like what I put. You have a link. When you're on one website, you want to go to another website. When you have relative, you're linking to different pages on your own site. We'll talk about this more as we go on. Sometimes what you want is you want what's called an email hyperlink. So let's look at that one. And I'll keep them both up here so that you can see them. So there was the first one. Now I'm going to say send, and I want to make sure I'm giving you the right syntax here. So I'm going to grab that one. And I could even put this on the next line just so you see it. All right. So this should say send in fact, I'll run it so you can see what it says. Send Jeff Scott an email. And what that should do is it should open up Outlook or whatever your email client is, and it should allow you to send an email, and it should have in the to line, it should have the jpscott@rankin.edu. So this is actually linking to a website. This is linking to an email address. All right, so we'll look at, in the book, I think they show a hands-on practice. I'm going to strongly encourage that you do every one of these. Some will be assigned, some will not be assigned, but if you want to learn this, this is the best way. There's a checkpoint. All right, finally, if you want to validate that the HTML that you wrote was indeed valid, all right, you can go out to the validator. What does that mean? Well, we're just about finished with this, but I'm going to take this file that I have created in here, all right, that is called index.html, and I'm going to go out here and I'm going to type in here validator, HTML. And it's going to find the validator for me, which is right here. And it wants it. I can do this in many ways, but I'm going to upload a file. And what file? I'm going to upload from my desktop the index.html file that I was just working on with you. If I can find it. There it is. So I'm telling it to load that file. Now I'm saying check. You'll notice I've got some errors. right? It says here I've got some problems where I didn't close things correctly, etc. All right? So we can go back and we can look at this. And what does it say here? I didn't close my tag correctly. There, it's now closed correctly. So let's go back to what we just did, and we'll back up, and we'll tell it to choose the file again. All right, and we'll tell it to check. And you'll notice now it's green. Green is good, meaning there were no errors or warnings. So this right here, https://validator.w3.org will allow you to validate your HTML documents. It's always considered good practice to do that. We're going to go into that in much more breadth and depth of coverage as the semester goes on. So in this chapter, we quickly described what HTML, the hypertext markup language, is. We looked a little bit at its predecessor, which is XHTML, which is kind of a combination of HTML and XML. We looked a very little bit at HTML5, which is the newest version of HTML. We identified the markup language in a web document, and I mean we looked at the HTML tag, the head tag, the body tag, the title tag. We looked at meta elements, like the meta tag. We looked at headings, the H1 through the H6. We looked at the P tag for paragraphs, the BR tag for line breaks. Now, I didn't show you divs, but we will look at them more in later chapters. We looked at ordered lists with a OL tag, unordered lists with a UL tag, and definition lists with a DL tag. We looked at the block quote tag. We looked at phrase elements. In other words, we looked at the M tag and the I tag, the B tag and the strong tag, the mark tag. All right, we looked at the sub tag for superscript, the tag for subscripting. All right. We looked a little bit, we just saw a slide that showed us some of the new HTML5 tags, those being header, nav, main, and footer. We'll go into those in much more depth and breadth of coverage later on as the semester progresses. We looked at some of the character entities. I showed you the greater than sign, the less than sign, the ampersand, and the copyright. And there are other ones. We looked at the anchor tag. We mentioned it with the anchor tag, you can go to another website, which would mean you'd put an absolute anchor element in, or you can go within the same page, the same site you're on, which would mean relative, or you can open up an email with an email tag. All right, we throughout the chapter, we coded, saved, and displayed our web page document, and we ended up testing the web page document to make sure it had valid syntax. Now that's it for Chapter 2. When I come back next, I will be going into Chapter 3, as you'd guess. And Chapter 3 will be describing cascading style sheets. And we're going to, again, all this stuff, we'll start to put it together, but we're going to do it in a very slow, very deliberate manner. So I'll be back with that video shortly.